Lesson 3.1, Solving Quadratic Equations. How do you solve a quadratic equation by graphing and algebraically? You were asked to solve problem number 3 for independent practice. I see it as x squared, x, non-x. So I know that this is in standard form. Because it's in standard form, I need to find my a, my b, and my c. After you locate your ABCs, you're supposed to find the axis of symmetry, which is the opposite of b all over 2a. So my axis of symmetry is the opposite of -6. So I have 6 divided by 2, which gives me 3. So my axis of symmetry is at x equals 3. I cannot see my x and y axis, so I want to make them a little darker so I can see them. X equals 3 is my axis of symmetry, so I'm going to find where x is 3. So here's the y-axis, 1, 2, 3. This is my axis of symmetry at x equals 3. I need to find my vertex. To locate your vertex, you are testing your axis of symmetry in the function. So f of 3 is -1. So my vertex is the coordinate point 3, -1. So here's my vertex right there. Now we need to find our y-intercept. My y-intercept is where I cross the y-axis, which is the c. So my y-intercept is the coordinate point 8. So I cross up here at 8. My 8 is 1, 2, 3 away for the axis of symmetry, which means his partner is also 3 away from the axis of symmetry. I skipped over the x-axis somehow. So I need to do an xy table so I can find where I skipped over the x-axis. Starting at my vertex, which is the coordinate point 3, -1. After 3, you're supposed to test 4. If I plug 4 into this equation, I get 0. So I cross 4, 0 right here. He is 1 away from the axis of symmetry, so his partner is also 1 away from the axis of symmetry. Because I finally touched the x-axis with a coordinate point, my table is done. I'm going to connect these with a smooth U-shape. Our answers are where we cross the x-axis. So I'm going to use the whiteout so I have a nice clean white space to write on. This is one answer. This is 1, 2. So this is where x equals 2. This is our other answer where x equals 4. So the answers for problem number 3 were x equals 2 and x equals 4. You were also asked to do problem number 4 for independent practice. I see x squared x and no x, so I know that this is in standard form. If it is in standard form, you need to identify your A, your B, and your C so that you can then find the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is the opposite of B all over 2 times A. So my axis of symmetry is 11 divided by -2. So my answer is -11 halves, which I need to turn into a decimal so I can figure out where it goes. -11 over 2 is a -5.5. So I know my axis of symmetry crosses at -5.5. I cannot see my x and y axis, so I'm going to make them just a little darker. X equals -5 is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here is -5.5 on our axis of symmetry. Now on that line, I need to find my vertex. Remember to find your vertex. You are solving the function at the axis of symmetry. F at -5.5 gives me 2.25. So my vertex is at the coordinate point -5.5, positive 2.25. So on here, I'm up 1, 2, and then up a 0.25. So here is my vertex. I need to know whether or not I cross the x-axis. Because A is a negative, I know that I will come down and cross the x-axis. Where? We need to use our xy table to figure out where. So here is my vertex. -5.5 gave me a 2.25. So if I'm at -5.5, let's try -5. Then try -4, then try -3, then try -2. We'll see how our parabola maps out. Testing -5, I got 2. So here's -5, 2. He's a half away from the axis of symmetry, so his partner is half away from the axis of symmetry. Testing -4, I got 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I crossed right here at the negative 4. He is 1.5 away from the axis of symmetry, so his partner is also 1.5 away from the axis of symmetry. I finally reached the x-axis, so I'm going to connect it with a smooth U shape. And right in these two spots where I cross the x-axis are going to be my solutions, my zeros. This was -1, -2, -3, so this was at -4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This was -7. So I found my two answers, one at -4, the other at -7. So the solutions for problem number 4, x is at -4 and x is at -7. You were also asked to solve for problem number 6 for independent practice. Because it's x squared x non-x, I know that this is in standard form. If it is in standard form, you need to locate your A, your B, and your C so that you could then find the axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry is x equals the opposite of B all over 2A. So my axis of symmetry, -6/4, which is equivalent to -1.5. So I know my axis of symmetry is at -1.5. So I'm going to graph that. I'm having a hard time finding my x and y axis, so I'm going to darken the lines so they're a little easier to see. Now it's a little easier to locate -1.5. So there's -1 and there's the 0.5. So here's my -1.5. On that line, we need to find our vertex. And remember, you find vertex by testing your axis of symmetry in the equation. F at -1.5 gives me -4.5. So my vertex is the coordinate point -1.5, -4.5, which is right there. So now I need to know, where's my y-intercept? Where do I cross the y-axis? That is always your C. My C is 0, so I cross the y-axis right here at 0. And that just happens to also be the coordinate point 0, 0. He is 1.5 away from the axis of symmetry, so his partner is also 1.5 away from the axis of symmetry. I already touched my x-axis, so I'm done graphing the problem. So here's me connecting it with a smooth U shape. These two spots where you cross the x-axis are your solutions, your zeros, where you cross the x-axis. So that is at 0, so x equals 0, solution number 1. This is -1, -2, -3. X equals -3 is solution number 2. So answers for problem number 6. You had x equals -3 and x equals 0. I have x squared x and a non-x. This matches standard form. In standard form, you need to locate your A, your B, and your C so that we could then find the axis of symmetry. Your axis of symmetry is the opposite of B all over 2A. I have -8 divided by -2, so my axis of symmetry is at x equals 4. I cannot see my x and y axis, so I am going to make them darker so they are easier to see. My axis of symmetry was at x equals 4. And that is at 1, 2, 3, 4. Here is my axis of symmetry. Now I need to find where on there is my vertex. You find your vertex by testing at the axis of symmetry. So when f is 4, I get -1. So my vertex is at the coordinate point 4, -1, which is right here. I need to know how I cross the x-axis, so let's see if the y-intercept gives it to me. I cross the y-axis at -17, and that is way down here. If it's way down there, that meant that I am not going to go up and cross the x-axis like I need to. So I'm going to go all the way down, and this is what my parabola is going to end up looking like. I never crossed the x-axis. So the answer to this problem is no solution, because I never crossed the x-axis. The answer to problem number 7 is no solution, meaning it never crossed the x-axis.